dear listeners. I need you to either like or dislike my videos to help more people see the book. So, if you enjoyed my book, please go back to the beginning and hit the like or dislike button, thumbs up or thumbs down button. I will also make Chapter 1 and Chapter 3 one video instead of 2 videos. So, ignore it when you see them. I will have the word revised in front of those 2 chapters. When I first started loading up videos, I was forced to do only 15 minutes per video. The more videos I uploaded, the more time I was given. I'm doing this for future listeners. Please let me know if there are any errors. I'm doing these videos without any help. And again, I will start Cush Sovereignty 2, Black Love on another channel, once I get 100 subscribers, YouTube, at Cush Sovereignty 2. Here's a brief summary of Cush Sovereignty 2, Black Love. The story continues with Mammalean, Cush's grandmother on his father's side of the family. Mammalean is narrating the love story of Wanyenyekevu in Volume 2 of the Cush Sovereignty series, continuing where Black Righteousness left off. It's a tale of love, war, and peace. After eliminating the city of evil and wicked citizens, Wanyenyekevu meets the final 2 people, including his wife, Anaya, and formed the justice system of the land, known as the Council of 12. Wanyenyekevu and his warriors get married, takes control of the land, builds a fortified city of faithful followers, and a military force that is ruthless and untouchable to the evil forces of the Abenians. The Mestizos grow to a population that spans throughout southern Arizona and central Mexico. Furious about his progress, the Abenians' leader is forced to show himself, but is forbidden to wage war until a particular time. As that time nears, the children and the elderly must return to Wanyenyekevu's hometown of Tallulah, Louisiana, until instructed by Sabaoth. Now, let's finish the final chapter of Cush Sovereignty, Black Righteousness. Chapter 24, Oidipous and the Pits of Hell. The warriors had all agreed that their new friends that they had just rescued had to travel with them, as they headed toward camp to meet Axel. Not expecting the 3 space cruisers, Axel hid herself, until she identified Zubin and Efusa. Axel shouted, "What are you guys doing back so soon?" Zubin shook his head. "Too much to explain right now, but we must get in touch with Oidipous, because a ship is to arrive tonight at, or around midnight, and we are not sure what he wants us to do." Axel said, "There's no way to tell where he is, but I would call this an emergency." She pressed the emergency button on her wrist. Simultaneously, everyone's communication devices vibrated, allowing everyone to see everyone else's location on the device. Oidipous called within 2 seconds. "What is it?" Oidipous asked. Axel said, "We have information that they expected the ship to arrive tonight around midnight." Oidipous said quickly, "Good work, and I will contact you later. Stay safe until you hear back from me." Oidipous quickly called Wanyenyekevu. "There is a ship that will be here in about 4 hours." Wanyenyekevu said, "Stay put, we will be there in 3. And disconnected. Oidipous said to himself out loud, 3? How in the fuck you going to do that? Wanyenyekevu yelled the battle cry to the top of his lungs and left Obe, Elijah, and Elisha and their men behind while the rest got on the jet ships and headed to Cuauhtémoc. Meanwhile, Axel and the rest at Vista Hermosa rested, for Axel had already prepared a meal for them in advance. They waited for Wanyenyekevu and his battalion since Oidipous and his crew were already hidden inside the main complex at Colonia Anahuac, awaiting Wanyenyekevu's arrival. 37 jet ships raced to Vista Hermosa, arriving just shy of 10:45 p.m. Wanyenyekevu radioed in just before he arrived there to check everyone's location and the situation at Vista Hermosa. Leaving the space cruisers there at Vista Hermosa, Axel was upset because the only thing she did all day was cook. Wanyenyekevu smiled and said as he opened his hand to her, "Here, ride with me." He radioed into Oidipous for his location. But Oidipous advised everyone to go black, because the ship was approaching quickly. Wanyenyekevu and the remaining jet ship stood there hovering over the lake's shoreline, awaiting Oidipous' call. When the ship arrived, it appeared out of nowhere, with no trail or lights to detect. It just appeared, then the sequence began. A light first shines on the tower and blinks 4 times. While the ship rotated at 180 degrees, then back to 0, then 360 degrees, it happened twice before 2 large doors slowly opened in the lake. The water splashed wildly as the ship approached the shore. Once the doors were open, there appeared to be a force field that prevented the water from going inside the opening. Then the spaceship made loud noises, and the force field created a pyramid-like shape, and steam appeared. Wanyenyekevu and the rest of his warriors began their race to the location in a V formation, and the V formation quickly became a U formation. At this time, the spaceship began its 360-degree counterclockwise rotation, and a beam of light shone into the opening. Oidipous radioed Wanyenyekevu. According to Jamie, it's about to release the people inside. Just as he spoke, you could see the people covered in a clear gel lowered down in the beam of light. Wanyenyekevu arrived right when the third person was being lowered into the opening. By this time, they were in their O formation and surrounded the ship. Wanyenyekevu ordered all speedsters to go up in the ship by the beam. Grace, Axel, and 2 more speedsters ran up the beam of light. Right when Axel entered the ship, guards noticed the intruders and the gun turrets on the building started firing upon Wanyenyekevu. Oidipous and Joy quickly destroyed the turrets as Joy created an electrical blast. Then 10 jet ships broke formation and quickly returned fire to the rest of the men as Oidipous, Joy, and Amardad forced their way into the tower. The people from the different towns and villages started running frantically away from the scene as more men showed up. Another group broke off the formation as Wanyenyekevu himself moved toward the opening. Seeing the bodies being lowered, he radioed the speedster to find the ship's pilot so they could land the ship, but they couldn't find the ship's pilot. Wanyenyekevu radioed Oidipous. They can't seem to find the pilot of the ship. Amardad, overhearing the conversation, seated herself in front of one of the computers and started reading its operating system as Oidipous grabbed one guy inside the tower. Tell me, who is driving that ship, and where is he? The man didn't say a word. Oidipous shot the man in his left knee. The man yelled in pain. Fuck you! Oidipous asked him again, but the man said nothing. He shot the man in his right knee. Amardad yelled. Hold on! Then radioed to the speedsters. The door is invisible. Pressing a few keys on the keyboard. It's open now. The man reached for his weapon as Oidipous had his back turned, listening to Amardad, and a loud blast fired. Oidipous and Amardad turned to see that Joy had shot the man in the back of the head as he was attempting to shoot Oidipous. Grace! Found the pilot and force him to land that ship! Shouted Oidipous, then looked at Joy. Damn, I got distracted. Thanks, baby. You just saved my life. The bodies stopped descending from the ship. It rotated accordingly and landed near the lake, forcing the men out of the ship as the large door opened up. Wanyenyekevu stood there atop one of the doors as the rest of his warriors landed their jet ships nearby. Jome and about 20 men approached Wanyenyekevu. Scratching his head, he said, All Abenian technology and weaponry, but not one Abenian is here. Daniel entered the spaceship and peeled the gel off one of the individuals inside. Daniel hit the man on his back, and the person started to breathe. He was fragile, and his breathing was faint. Daniel yelled out to Wanyenyekevu. Wanyenyekevu! They are alive, but I need help peeling this gel off. The people from the towns and villages stood by watching, and Wanyenyekevu said to one man. You! The guy pointed to himself. Yes, what is your name? The man said. Sanchez, I need you to gather some men. Wanyenyekevu paused and yelled back at Daniel. How many people are in there? Daniel said. Over 1,000. Turning back to the man, Wanyenyekevu said. Get all these people and go help the man inside. And the man did just as Wanyenyekevu ordered. The people were confused about what was happening, thinking that they had just been saved, in the back of their minds, but they asked themselves, was this man just as evil as the last tyrant? Wanyenyekevu radioed, I need to transport over 1,000 people back to Madin at Altenware. The bus driver that Zubin saved told Zubin, the buses we use every morning can carry plenty of them to your camp, and there are more at the depot, as well as Skycraft. We will be more than happy to drive them there. Zubin radioed to Wanyenyekevu, give us a few minutes, we will have more than we need. The old man and his wife, along with the people on the cruisers, guided Zubin and the rest of the warriors to the bus depot. On their way there, the old man, teary-eyed, asked, why would you save us from our oppressors, Oidipous and Abeni B6? Who are we to receive such a reward, or what are they searching for? Zubin smiled. It is our leader, a very proud and spiritual leader, who has led us to salvation, to enlightenment, and Sabaoth. It is he who questions what is going on here, with his people. The old man said, his people? Is he Wakatilian? Zubin, pointing at Wanyenyekevu, that's him there, isn't it obvious? The old man said, okay, yes, but he mustn't journey down to the abyss, at least not now. If you honor this man, don't let him go down there, at least not tonight. Zubin radioed Oidipous, I was just advised that it would not be wise to let Wanyenyekevu go down in that hole that they are calling the abyss, at least not tonight. Oidipous said, why is that? Zubin said, I was only advised that it would not be wise for him to go down there, at least not tonight. Oidipous said, I'll see what I can do. Oidipous is unsure what to do as he tells Joy and Jom, with a few other warriors, what was said to him, and they approach Wanyenyekevu. Please, we do not know what is down there, but we've advised not to allow you to go down until morning. Wanyenyekevu said, whatever is down there, I can handle it, and it'll be all right. Jom looked at Wanyenyekevu. I feel you should wait until morning. Wanyenyekevu smiled. Okay, I'll wait, my friend. That night, they pulled 2,695 people from the spaceship. Upon listening to the advice of his friends, everyone but Wanyenyekevu went down into the abyss, and pushed out an additional 665 people that were alive. All night long, as rumors spread throughout the land, the entire territory was shut down as the people rushed to reach the location of the abyss. By 6 a.m., the buses started arriving, moving all the people from the ship and the abyss back to Madin at Altenware. The locals volunteered and began taking people to Madin at Altenware, and the rest began taking some of the locals back home. The last bus left about 1 p.m. Wanyenyekevu camped out at the opening with 15 of his warriors. Wanyenyekevu watched the last bus leave, and many of the locals had gone home. Tried and weary, he decided to wait one more day to venture into the abyss. His warriors were sitting by a campfire while the women prepared food, given to them by the locals. Jom walked towards Wanyenyekevu. About 20 more minutes and you can eat. You have to be tired. Wanyenyekevu said. Yes, I am. Scratching his head and yawning, Wanyenyekevu repeated himself. Yes, I am. Closing his eyes for a second, Wanyenyekevu said, I'm too tired to even think about the abyss and its content, but as soon as I get up, we all shall see what it is that they didn't want me to see. Jom said, I am curious as well. Enjoying a great meal and a few minutes of discussing what had happened that day, Wanyenyekevu finally went to sleep that evening at 4 p.m. Wanyenyekevu finally woke up at 6 a.m. Everyone approached the abyss. He left 2 men up top while he and the others headed down the abyss using the jet ships. They descended slowly down the deep room with their lights on about 200 feet as they all looked around. This is an enormous place, echoed Jom's voice. Wanyenyekevu shook his head. Yeah, pretty much what Kenji said. A few warriors landed. Someone finds the lights, or something in here. Jom ordered his warriors. Would you like for me to turn the lights on? Everyone was up in arms until they saw a large, computerized female face appear in front of them. My name is Isabella. I didn't mean to startle you. Would you like for me to turn on the lights? Wanyenyekevu said. Hi, my name is Wanyenyekevu. What is this place? Abella said. This is a research and development center where we study and document ways to eradicate the Wakatilians' DNA, code name New Willie Lynch. This floor researches and tests synthetic drugs and compares different DNA strains. Abella turned on the lights behind her. This is where we collect Wakatilians. Using their 9 DNA series, we can pinpoint and find the most mutated cells in their body. The Wakatilians are dropped here in a protective shell, and we draw blood from each individual. A conveyor belt started to run as Abella continued. They are then judged by age, weight, height, geographical location, and sex, and taken to the second floor for manipulation and sexual exploration. At the end of the conveyor belt was a small hole, and they all heard a door unlock itself and open right next to the conveyor belt. The lights on the second floor turned on as everyone got off their jet ships, walked toward the door, and began walking down the stairs. Abella continued. This is the manipulation department, codenamed Divide and Conquer. Here we devise ways to allow Wakatilians to destroy each other by using psychological means to create self-hatred. Teaching them to disrespect their women, molest children, rape, drug use and abuse, alcoholism, and then we replace some of them into their respected communities. As they reached the bottom of the stairs, blue lights turned on, one by one. These blue lights were on top of tubular glass of different sizes encased with people in them, covered in a transparent gel. Embryos, as well as some Wakatilians of different ages, appeared in them. Abella continued, as Wanyenyekevu's heart seemed to sink into his chest and his eyes watered up. Synthetic drugs are used to control them and in a lucrative pornographic broadcast located downstairs. Walking past the last row of enclosed tubes, Wanyenyekevu looked into the eyes of an elderly man suspended in the casing and put his head down, feeling as if he had failed him. Tears were now rolling down his eyes. A bright light was turned on, covering the entire floor, revealing thousands of bodies. Wanyenyekevu fell to his knees in disbelief and yelled in a horrible cry unheard of before. He ran up to see 10 dead Wakatilians, primarily naked and chained to tables. Some had needles in their arms or a white powdery substance stuck to their noses. Abella continued. Here we... Wanyenyekevu ran from table to each body, checking for a pulse, but no pulse was found. Wanyenyekevu looked up at Jom. Stay here and find out more. I'll be back. The rest of the warriors followed him. Wanyenyekevu turned around and yelled with so much anger. Stay fucking here! Wanyenyekevu ran back up the steps, jumped on his jet cruiser, and drove to shore. He fell to the ground, yelling, cursing, and swinging his arms angrily, eventually crying himself to sleep. Wanyenyekevu found himself covered up and woke up to a baby crying, and his warriors by his side. Jom holding the baby. All the information was gathered, but there was one level that was tightly sealed. Even Abella was unauthorized to open it. Wanyenyekevu stood up. I wanted to apologize for my words and actions. It was unlike me, and I repent to you for it. Please forgive me. Wanyenyekevu looked around him, and thousands of people surrounded him. What is this, and whose baby are you holding? Jom said. The people are here to thank you for destroying their oppressor, and the baby was found in a cage. Wanyenyekevu looked at the baby and saw it was from the same tribe and clan as Obe. He turned to talk to the people, but they couldn't hear him. Jom handed him a bullhorn. My friends, my name is Wanyenyekevu. We have much to talk about, but I must bury my people. The crowd yelled. We will bury them, for you. In tears once again he said, Thank you, for it would have been challenging for me to do it. Wanyenyekevu handed Jom the bullhorn and said, Dekerish. Jom looked at him strangely, and Wanyenyekevu smiled. The baby's name will be Dekerish. The crowd divided themselves into groups and began to bury the Wakatilian people that were in the abyss. While Wanyenyekevu separated himself from everyone, taking his jet ship on top of a tall mountain, and wrote, Why? In the beginning, We were people of different beliefs. We spoke several different languages. Yes, we were great in our own way. The largest continent in the world. Even today. Some even refer to her as a girl, a woman, the mother. Africa. Riches include gold, diamonds, and pearls. The beginning of civilization was started in her. Yet, having so many accomplishments, got credit for none. Creating pyramids, that are scientific wonders of today. Numerous things, that are even used today. Wakatilians today, Negroes, niggas. But Africans back then. Let's just call it yesterday. Still unique, different, very simple people. Still not given credit that they are due. Why? Even back then, there are so many people that I could name. From the past to the present, but I won't, for we all know their names. My problem is, why? Why should any human being have to defend themselves? For being a certain race, creed, or color? The past is truly the past. That we learned from. Ignorance played a major part in the Europeans' hearts, which thought they were superior back then. There are even some of those that think that way today. We were murdered, but it was as if killing a fly. We were beaten, much like I've seen some people train a dog. Women were raped, children molested, men tested. Just considered simply as stock. Why? Now, since that time, we celebrated your holidays. Fighting your wars. This thing called the 4th of July? But who really won their independence? Give me liberty or give me death. Someone once said, but whom did he refer to? They got their liberty. We were sentenced to death. All men are created equal. Except for those of us who were considered savages in those days. Simply because we couldn't read or write in their language. They couldn't understand ours. Did we call them savages? All this for the sake of liberty, they say. But none of it was for us. We fought more wars, but died in vain. Why? Our fathers, our mothers, our children, our ancestors were murdered. Why? 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 I write not to instill hatred for anyone. Just love. The time is now to awaken. Many years we have been miseducated. But we can read and write, now, and learn about the truth if no one else teaches you the truth you have you. If I asked you, do you know who you are? If the answer is no, my reply. Why? Red lights flashed on the communicator vibrating on Wanyenyekevu's hip. It was Obe who was calling on the emergency channel. Wanyenyekevu? Wanyenyekevu! Wanyenyekevu quickly answered the communicator. Yes, Obe, what is it? Wanyenyekevu replied. Looks like Oidipous has gotten your message. Look at your GPS. It's covered in a gigantic mass. I can't even count how many there are. He's headed straight to you. Wanyenyekevu shouted the battle cry and ordered all civilians out of the region until further notice. Pressing the emergency button on the communicator as the warriors prepared themselves, Wanyenyekevu called Obe on his device. When they get here, make sure you are behind them, and kill them as quietly as you can until you are noticed. Then take no mercy, those that survive, we will take mercy on whom Sabaoth tells us. 2. The fearless warriors were ready, and even some civilians joined in to do all they could to help. Yael appears to Wanyenyekevu. Prepare your men for the abyss, for now you fight only flesh, but down there you shall fight only spirits. Fight with honor and not anger, for this battle is not yours but Sabaoth. And then he disappeared. Only miles away, Wanyenyekevu gathers all the warriors, opens his communicator, and says the survivor's prayer. All who come, that are not evil, and those that survive, I will test their hearts, and let Sabaoth decide. Amen. Turning to the civilians. Shoot to kill, however, if they survive, it's because their hearts might be pure, not evil. However, trust none of them until I see them first. Sabaoth will make way for his people to live. Obe was miles behind Oidipous, and Oidipus was unaware of their presence. Obey and Wanyenyekevu send out all speedsters to minimize Oidipous' army by 10% before Oidipous reached Wanyenyekevu. The speedsters were called back to rest once the fighting began. Oidipous was surrounded, and his men didn't have a chance. With Obey, Elijah, Daniel, Grace and their men in the rear and Wanyenyekevu and the rest were in the front, they devastated Oidipous and his men. The speedsters were called back in to finish the battle. They brought the rest of the men back to Wanyenyekevu as he touched them and decided their fate. They chose 40 men to live, and the rest died on the spot. There stood Oidipous with a broken leg and gunshot to the shoulder. "We finally meet, Oidipous," said Wanyenyekevu. "Who are you?" Oidipous replied. "I am the child of the Most High, who was sent to rescue his people from people like you. This battle was meant to be from the first time I met your youngest son to the oldest, and it was me and my men who had the honor of killing all of them. I see what you have been doing to my people, and the pain is great, but I will not be the one who kills you. Sabaoth's children shall have that honor." Oidipous replies, "Fuck you, and your damn people," and spits on the ground in front of Wanyenyekevu. "Interrogate him for all and any information needed, and let the people have him," Wanyenyekevu said to Jom, as he turned and walked away. After days of interrogating, the men, women, and children all attacked and killed Oidipous. Wanyenyekevu met Obey, and discussed what to do with the dead. Wanyenyekevu was sitting down as Obey stood up. "Obey, have you discovered your gift yet?" Obey said. "No, but I've been fasting and training. When it comes, I guess it will come." Wanyenyekevu took out his Colt 45 and shot Obey. Obey yelled, "What'd you do that for?" Wanyenyekevu said, "A few times I've seen you hit and stabbed and you didn't even know it, and Sabaoth never showed me in any vision of harm coming to you. Plus, look at you. You've been standing in a pile of burning red-hot coals for at least 10 minutes, and you didn't say a word, and by the way, when I shot you, you didn't feel a thing, you just reacted to me shooting you." He grabbed the bullet from off the ground and gave it to him. "And one more thing," tapping on his earpiece. "Jom, bring Dekarish." Grace approached them with the baby. "Here is your kinsman. May he grows up to be your greatest gift, a son." Obey was excited and happy and started crying, as Wanyenyekevu walked away and started praising Sabaoth. Later that day, Wanyenyekevu called everyone together. "It is now time to enter the abyss." Many stayed on top and watched as Wanyenyekevu and 50 of his men descended to the first level, leaving 10 of his men. Then the second level, where he left 10 more, and on to the third level. Wanyenyekevu, looking around, noticed the place had been clean, and there was no evidence that anything had ever been down there. On the third level, they came to what appeared to be a door made of boulders with a sign of an unknown language. Hades. Amardad interpreted the language. Wanyenyekevu got on the communicator to the men on each level above them. "Gather up anything we missed and start setting charges to blow this damn place to kingdom come," as they all began looking for levers and switches to see if they could find a way to open the door. Obey started hitting the door with his hands. Still nothing. Wanyenyekevu orders everyone to stop. "I have an idea." He took the sand from around his neck and grabbed his canteen. He put 1 drop of the content into the canteen and ordered everyone to wipe their weapons with the water from the canteen and then wipe their exposed skin with it. Obey wiped his hands, arms, and neck with the content from the canteen and just touched the door, which turned into a puff of smoke. "Well, that was easy," said Obey. A narrow stairway appeared. They all headed down, but Wanyenyekevu stopped the men. "Only my strongest warriors in Sabaoth will be able to come, for I fear that what is down here is truly demonic." His strongest, fearless, and ready warriors stood there: Obey, Grace, Mercy, Joy, Jom, Elijah, Elisha, Daniel, and Aldib, with Wanyenyekevu taking the lead. The stairway was 5 feet wide and was spiraling downward. Strange noises were surrounding them, and every few feet hung torches mounted to the cave's walls. A liquefied substance was oozing down the walls, and the smell was unbearable. As they reached the bottom of the stairway, there was an enormous pit 200 yards wide in a forever circle of darkness, followed by a level of boiling red fiery pit of lava. This pattern repeatedly continued, going deeper and deeper downward. Looking up, they saw the same pattern repeating itself upward. As they walked through the darkness, they could hear a sizzling sound, followed by screams. Reaching for their flashlights, they saw little hands, some were claws touching them and turning into puffs of smoke as the warriors were being handled. Wanyenyekevu said, "They cannot even touch the blood of Mshika in the sand." Pointing their flashlights in different areas, they could see the faces of some of the hideous creatures peeking out and looking at them. The sounds of movement surrounded them, and they were silent as they headed down, looking and observing when Oidipous said, "I see why people say, 'Go to hell.'" Joam said, "Only you would say such a thing, in a time like this." Shrugging his shoulders, Oidipous said, "No, I'm being for real. This place is horrible." Wanyenyekevu interrupted. "Focus! This is a place one must truly stay focused and remain in the spirit." They walked to the end of the cavern, where they found a mound of rocks at the edge. There was an opening that looked like a large well. There stood a face with only its eyes peeking out at them. "What the fuck are you doing in here again, Wanyenyekevu?" Wanyenyekevu said. "Again?" Then he thought about his dream he had years ago. The creature interrupted. "Fuck that, get out!" As he raised from the hole, it stood 10 feet tall, and it was hideous. Horns grew out of its head, and bear-like claws grew out of its hand. It shouted something, and thousands of minions of all sizes quickly surrounded them. Wanyenyekevu and his warriors quickly formed a circle with their backs turned against each other. "Who are you? And how do you know my name?" the beast said. "I am Aestia, the commander and ruler of Sloth. I am well aware of your foolishness, and today, it will stop." The beast shouted to the minions, and they attacked. Wanyenyekevu and his warriors attacked the minions. They turned into puffs of dust as the warriors fought back using their weapons and gifts. Wanyenyekevu gave command every 10 minutes before he ordered Elisha to form a dome. When it was time, he counted down. 5, 4, 3. Now! And everyone got in it. All the creatures leaped at them but landed on top of Elisha's dome as Wanyenyekevu poured a drop from the canteen onto Elisha's hands, and all the creatures that came in contact with the dome turned into dust. The entire dome was covered in soot, and it blinded them within the dome. Wanyenyekevu said, "Lower the dome, but stay alert." As he lowered the dome, they were all covered with soot. They ran to the stairway, but Aestia stood in front of them. Wanyenyekevu stood in front and ordered everyone to wipe off their weapons and reapply the liquid from the canteen to their weapons and themselves while he stalls the demon. "Are you afraid that I will destroy you?" Wanyenyekevu said. Aestia raised in anger. "You silly man, your flesh, I can jump into your body and make you kill yourself." Wanyenyekevu jokingly. "Nah, you wouldn't do that. You're too lazy. Remember, old commander and ruler of laziness. You take honor in something so ridiculous." Daniel handed Wanyenyekevu the canteen as he looked up at the creature. "Let me clean this off for your destruction, if you don't mind, and let's have at it." Aestia replied. "Your puny little weapons can't warm me?" Wanyenyekevu shouted. "Impy!" And within seconds shouted, "Iwa!" They all used their gifts and powers against Aestia as it yelled out in pain before them all. With one force and in one moment, they destroyed Aestia into a pile of dust. The dust blew away slowly, and an earthquake shook the foundation. Wanyenyekevu shouted, "Quickly! Up the stairs, this place is his domain and is finna turn into dust itself." Boulders started falling into the lava below as they ran up the stairway. Oidipous and Wanyenyekevu were the last ones to come out. "Everyone out and get ready to blow this place up!" shouted Wanyenyekevu over his earpiece. Clearing everyone out on each level and setting the charges for 5 minutes for each level, they heard the explosions as they all made it out of the abyss. They all ran to their jet ships and drove as fast as they could before hearing the last one, and the entire Earth imploded, creating a crater the size of the abyss. Circling back around, they looked down to see the bottom of the crater. "Fill Oidipous and his dead in that hole and cover it up," said Wanyenyekevu. Returning to the city, Wanyenyekevu ordered everyone to get cleaned up and rest. The next morning, Wanyenyekevu and his men, using their gifts, also took part in helping the people rebuild their town. Speedsters helped gather the rest of Oidipus' dead and dump their bodies into the abyss. The people called the place till this day El Malsirement Perecera, which means, "The evil shall surely perish." Astonished at what they saw, many civilians joined Wanyenyekevu's army. Afterward, they buried Wanyenyekevu's people on the opposite side of town. It took 6 weeks to bury all the bodies from the abyss, and they were buried in a beautiful park created by the locals they named El Mar de Dolor, which means the Sea of Pain. There was a glorious celebration in honor of the people who died there, and the people performed the funeral in the Wakatilians' tradition that Wanyenyekevu taught them. This celebration lasted for 25 days on May 1st and was called Watasasa Kapumzika, which translated, "His people now rest," and is honored every year. 2 months after the abyss was seized, many of Wanyenyekevu's warriors departed to find their family members. Within 6 months, they started an exodus back to Madin at Altenware. Heading back, many of them heard of Wanyenyekevu's fame. They were also bringing back seeds, animals, and family members. 47 warriors had left, but over 2,000 came back. A trail of warriors living and protecting Sabaoth's land reached from Madin at Altenware to Colonia Anahuac. 687 miles were protected to the point whereby the people started feeling free again. Within their borders was Laguna de Bustillos, a vast lake that was perfect for fishing. An irrigation system was used to help farm most of this region. At the southwest banks of Laguna de Bustillos, there was the city of Colonia Anahuac. They used Colonia Anahuac much like a huge flea market, where the old bartering system was awakened and utilized once again. By reconstructing highways 5, 16, 21, and Del Ejido Freeway. Heading west of Colonia Anahuac, there stood Ciudad Cuauhtémoc surrounded by Highway 21, a centralized location or the region's heart. A beautiful landscape mixed with grassland and desert with various mountains overlooking the entire area. Going in any direction would be a breath of fresh air. 25 miles to the north on Highway 5 was a stretch of land that led to the twin cities of Colonia Alvaro Obregon and Grañas El Venado. Wanyenyekevu claimed all the land as Tierra de Dios or Sabaoth's land. It was just the complete opposite of the area where Wanyenyekevu was born and raised, but he finally grew to love the place. Unlike Louisiana, there was no humidity. Tornadoes were not a common factor. But the monsoon season brought back memories of home at times. The path from Madin at Altenware to this new area called home was called Wanyenyekevu's Trail. 80% of the people stayed and learned the ways of Wanyenyekevu and served Sabaoth. The rest were left alone and in peace but honored Wanyenyekevu as a great man. They moved in different directions but always stayed west of Wanyenyekevu Trail for safety reasons. During the cleanup and destruction of the abyss, all the drugs were destroyed except the natural marijuana was kept and used by Wanyenyekevu. He didn't consider it a drug but an herb. The people were unfamiliar with farming, gardening, medicine, computerized equipment, or the Abenian technology. Therefore, they were taught how to use it. They quickly learned to treat glaucoma, reverse the carcinogenic effects of tobacco, improve lung health, stop epileptic seizures, and decrease the symptoms of a disorder called Dravet's syndrome. He taught the people how to become herbalism led to the introduction of hemp, a popular commodity amongst the people. The green lands were now used for farming, and the people felt peace for the first time in a long time. They used Madin at Altenware as a training base only, but the people living in this new area raised families and had a comfortable life. The Wakatilians that were captured from the ship and the abyss took some time to heal even with all the healers, but they eventually were healed from their diseases, addictions, and phobias. Many Wakatilians of the men, women, and children alike had PTSD and refused to return to their homes as a sense of embarrassment and violation. They, too, stayed in the region, learning and teaching their ways of life to the people. It took the Wakatilians a while to adjust to Computans and Anakitas, who worshipped Sabaoth. Once it was proven, they, too, received gifts and powers from Sabaoth that were unimaginable. The population grew to 769,000 men, women, and children, all qualified to be called fierce warriors. These people became known as Mestizos. The end.